Can you hear me?
Star Wars always had this beautiful clarity to it, you know? You knew who the heroes were, the villains were straight up villains. Bad was bad, good was good, evil was evil. Darth Vader was a complex and ridiculously awesome character, but there was always no denying he was the bad guy. We understood that Anakin Skywalker fell over to the dark side, did morally reprehensible things, and that was evil, even though I still think he was one of the best Star Wars characters ever.
This is where the fun begins.
There wasn't really any confusion about what he was, and we all accepted that. That struggle of good against evil is pretty much the heart of what Star Wars was built on. Not this.
This isn't about good or bad. This is about power.
But that simplicity is gone, lost to the ocean of the modern sensibilities of Disney and their, progressive creators. The franchise has become a box-checking competition. Diversity, inclusion.
They're incredibly diverse, and they happen to be diverse cast. They're incredibly diverse, and the internals is just for diversity as well, and making sure that there's representation.
The film has such diversity, such inclusion.
Incredibly diverse.
Because we're getting like more diversity within this series.
It's wonderful to see not only some diversity across the entire show, but also diversity being in positions of power.
This is necessary. This is a revolutionary moment.
All well and good if they weave it into great stories. What we get instead are these characters and plot lines that are so forced they might as well be holding a giant look at me sign. I mean, it's not actually all that surprising that the writers are ticking off a social justice checklist, but that realization doesn't make it hurt any less, because it takes you right out of the moment. All you need to do is just look at Amazon's Rings of Power.
Swordsmanship is about balance rather than strength. Fight with your feet, not your arms.
And how they hammered us over the head with the most aggressive political marketing campaign I've ever seen for a TV show.
It is so important that we make it as accessible as we possibly can.
I love that she's an empowered woman.
It's an incredibly diverse world.
There are so many diverse people out there, but now they get to see themselves staring back at them.
I'm a Harfoot because suddenly there are black hobbits. I'm a black hobbit.
It is everything. It is everything for people of colour.
We have visual representation to be able to stare at a screen and see a version of themselves staring right back at them.
You know, watching TV and watching a lot of films and stuff, I never saw people of my colour.
They literally told us to forget the spirit of Tolkien's work because, you know, they're going to make something better. All the pre-release hype was really just a diversity campaign. Warrior Galadriel.
Remove your hand from me, sir.
Galadriel.
Yeah, Galadriel.
First female dwarf.
She is the first female dwarf that we have ever seen on screen.
First female dwarf of color.
She is the first dwarf of color.
Now, a more inclusive Middle Earth might sound like an interesting theory in the minds of activists, but shouldn't there be a need for it to feel, I don't know, organic to the world Tolkien envisioned? But of course, all it became was some hastily patched on project to look progressive because they had zero interest in telling a story.
Filmmakers, especially young women, ask me, you know, if I want to become a filmmaker, what do I do? You know, I'm always like, when that happens, say yes. Don't say, I don't know how to make a movie, because men don't say that.
Close your eyes.
And so we have The Acolyte, another Star Wars show, another round of YouTube ratios worse than a middle school cafeteria fight. Honestly, it's pretty impressive at this point. Disney's on a roll uniting the fan base in a way even the great George Lucas couldn't manage, just not in the way they thought. But wait, don't worry guys, this show is special. We've got a strong female lead.
Our show was much more woman-centered than what I have previously seen in the Star Wars world.
Diversity quotas filled to the brim.
This is the first time you're getting to see an Asian Jedi, you know, in JJ.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what could go wrong? It's a recipe for success, right?
When it comes to the world of fantasy and sci-fi in general, it hasn't felt like a safe space always for people of color.
Yeah, who needs originality or good storytelling when you can recycle the same formula that's been tanking other Star Wars projects? I guess I can see the appeal in self-sabotage, just to please a very loud minority of people who probably even care less about Star Wars.
You can do it. Like, you just have to have the confidence to walk in there and pretend like you know how to do it.
The trailer. Well, let's just say it oozes the same subtlety as a hut with a megaphone at a weight loss retreat. The progressive agenda is plastered on so thick you'd think political correctness was a newly discovered superpower.
This is about power and who is allowed to use it.
Naturally, anyone pointing out the dumpster fire gets the usual round of charming epithets: sexist, enemy of progress, blah blah blah. Because bad writing is always the fault of the audience, not the multi-billion-dollar corporation. Look, no one cares about the gender or identity of the lead character. Male, female, alien, droid, just give us a good story, believable struggles, and we'll follow them to the outer rim and back. But what The Acolyte seems to be selling is yet another lecture disguised as entertainment.
Because I was not reflected for so many times throughout these films in the past.
But hold on a second, the show isn't even out yet. How can you be so certain it's going to be bad? Because, my friend, this is Disney. We've seen how it usually plays out. And if Disney's reputation isn't enough, check out these interviews with the creator.
This is like what we understand to be Star Wars, like the idea that like that only came from George Lucas, that only George Lucas holds the key for what we understand to be Star Wars is just untrue. But I would have been able to understand as a queer person, and I think I would have had a completely different life.
There's many different eras, but it is always, always, always about the spiritual journey of what it is to become who you are.
You can practically hear the agenda in her voice. Pretty obvious she doesn't even care about the story itself, just about using it as a way to preach to the audience. The whole goal of this show, like Rings of Power, isn't about expanding the lore or giving us an epic story worthy of the Star Wars name. It's just a very long, very expensive way to preach a message that's been shoved down our throats for years now.
It's not a secret. I'm the first elf of color, you know? So I thought it was...
But fans are tired of being treated like unruly younglings who need constant reminders about, well, whatever the trendy slogan of the day is. And if the ratio isn't proof enough for them, the reception might be. When Disney Lucasfilm projects first came out, they were always loaded with heavy-handed messaging. It felt like walking on eggshells. You couldn't even question the show's quality without someone calling you a bigot or some other nasty label. But times have changed, and that game doesn't work anymore. Now, people expect studios to try that tactic, using politics as a shield against bad storytelling. They want to shut down any real criticism and make it seem like hating their show means you hate certain groups of people. The good news is that the audience smells that kind of nonsense a mile away because, I know this might sound crazy, people are tired of being lectured to.
Dudes roll out of film school, throw on a Spielberg hat, and go, I know everything that I'm doing. And the reality is that you can do it. Like, you just have to have the confidence to walk in there and pretend like you know how to do it.
This isn't about you.
The Hollywood girl boss trope is basically where they take a successful male character, change the pronouns, and think they've written a strong female lead. Yeah, we've been over that for a decade now. These characters are bizarre, hyper-competent caricatures that have about as much depth as a cardboard cutout.
Party's over, pal.
How about you just buzz off?
And of course, Disney's been a big player in this terrible trend, churning these characters out across all their brands. And surprise, surprise, most of them have tanked.
Scripts, it's like they love describing women as like badass, strong, like, and they're always like coming into a room and like they know everything, and it's like, oh, that's a strong woman. It's like, I don't want to watch that. I'm not like that.
Sometimes they accidentally nail it. Jyn Erso from Rogue One was a gritty, no-nonsense fighter, and you could totally see the influence of 90s female heroes like Sarah Connor or Ellen Ripley.
Good morning, Dr. Silberman.
Of course, naturally, Disney didn't want to run with a winning formula. Nah, better to just give us Rey, who goes from desert scavenger to the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy in about 5 minutes flat. Because reasons. I mean, these studios rake in obscene amounts of money. You'd think they could afford some writers who understand basic character development. Instead, what do we get? Checklist characters who exist to preach or fulfill some diversity requirement.
That you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
Meanwhile, Japanese media has quietly been doing it right for ages. They know an awesome female protagonist needs to be a compelling person first, someone the audience actually wants to root for. Many of the best female anime characters have that same vibe as the classic female action heroes of the 90s. Strong, capable, flawed, but undeniably cool. Sometimes it feels like Disney has this cheat sheet for good characters that they lost halfway through writing the sequels. It's bizarre because Star Wars used to be great at this. We had Han Solo, flawed but lovable.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
Or even Luke with his classic hero's journey.
The uniform.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
But now, it's like a factory banging out blandness. Finn is the perfect example.
That's one hell of a pilot!
That initial reveal was a stormtrooper gone rogue.
This is a rescue. I'm helping you escape. Can you fly a TIE fighter? You're with the Resistance.
The possibilities were incredible. Like, we've been conditioned for decades to see stormtroopers as faceless grunts. Finn breaks that mold, and suddenly there's this whole untapped well of trauma, guilt, the fight for your own free will. The potential for a very complex arc was right there for the taking. You could even tie it back to the prequels, make a commentary on child soldiers and cycles of violence. It would have been heavy, sure, but Star Wars has dealt with that stuff before. But what do we get? Some watered-down comedic sidekick stuff who spent half the trilogy screaming Rey's name.
Where's Rey? Rey! 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 Where's Rey? Rey! Rey, I never told you Rey! What? Rey! 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 Rey!
Not just bad, but also incredibly disappointing, especially when they kept teasing us with the whole Force sensitivity angle. A former stormtrooper grappling with the Force. Can you imagine the inner conflict that would have created? It would have been beautiful and messy, just like his character needed. But Disney plays it safe as always. Jedi powers go to the nice, conveniently untroubled, strong female lead, who's basically a blank slate.
For my family. They'll be back. One day.
And Rey, I'll just say this. There's a way they would have done her character justice, and making her this instant master of everything the Jedi have spent centuries training for. That just cheapens the entire concept.
Do you think she has any just kind of inherent weaknesses or...
I mean, I don't really believe in weaknesses in people.
Okay.
She didn't need to struggle, to earn it. And that robs her journey of meaning, especially when you compare it to Luke's path.
Maybe I'm just going crazy.
The same mess trickled down to Vice Admiral Holdo, the absolute worst Star Wars character of all time.
Very kind of you to make me aware.
It might sound harsh, but it really isn't.
Stick to your post and follow my orders.
They wanted her to be this take-charge, authoritative figure.
All these different qualities, flirtatious, sensual, and powerful.
She came off as patronizing and unreasonable.
I've dealt with plenty of trigger-happy flyboys like you. You're impulsive, dangerous.
And they use Poe to assert her dominance. The guy's a skilled pilot, and she dismisses him out of hand for no good reason, and then use the Holdo maneuver to explain it all away. It smacks of, we need to make the man look bad so the woman looks good.
To be a strong woman, you have to be this. To be, you know, it's like, again, putting us into a box again.
The kind of lazy, surface-level feminism that undermines actually strong female roles.
But I don't know anything about her. So it's hard to develop some sort of admiration or connection with women when they're written very two-dimensional and don't really give you enough.
Sometimes I just wish they'd take a page from the original trilogy. Hell, even the prequels.
Anakin, don't try to grow up too fast.
Padme, Leia. They were strong. They were capable women without needing to be propped up at the expense of the guys around them.
What the hell are you doing?
Somebody has to save our skins. Into the garbage, you flyboy!
It's possible, clearly. So why does it feel like Disney forgot the formula? Well, we all know why. It's the exact same reason we're getting a show called The Acolyte.
Watching a project, you want to feel like the characters are representatives that you're seeing of yourself on screen are relatable or attainable.
I'm telling you guys like the truth. Like that's how I made my first film, was that I was like, I know what's going on. I didn't at all. And I think it shows in the movie. But I got to make my first one, which helped me to make my...
He was the best star pilot in the galaxy.
Remember when Star Wars meant something?
Don't make me kill you.
You know, before it became a corporate megaphone for whatever social justice crusade Disney was currently championing.
She's also the first woman and the first person of color to direct a Star Wars film.
There was a time when the Force,
The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
lightsabers, and epic journeys across the galaxy were what mattered.
Never tell me the odds.
Honestly, I'm half convinced the studio heads have never actually seen the original trilogy.
The rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Otherwise, how do you explain this relentless drive to undermine everything the franchise was built on?
It's about good and evil, but heroes, what makes a hero? What's friendship? What's the idea of sacrificing yourself for something larger? They're all really basic things. They say, well, you don't have to make a movie about that. It's very obvious, but it's actually not. It's not that obvious to a lot of people unless you have somebody tell you every generation that this is what our country believes in.
They've told us to forget compelling characters and galaxy-shaking drama.
I'm ending all of this. I'm gonna burn it down.
It's about scoring political points now.
Let the past die. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be.
Which is fine, I guess, but don't pretend like it has anything to do with the Star Wars fans know and love. Will it be saved? Can it even be saved? That's the million-credit question, isn't it? You'd think the disastrous fan backlash would make Disney finally reconsider their, let's say, creative trajectory.
All the like kids out there who will see themselves like reflected in us, which is something that I...
For the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But not really.
Did do a couple of like RPG campaigns during COVID with my friends on Zoom, and there are a couple of characters from those campaigns that may or may not be in the show. So
apparently ignoring the disgruntled masses who made this franchise an empire in the first place is the way to go.
It's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
And if you don't like it, they put you in an all-in-one name-calling box, making it easier to just dismiss you as trolls. Which is why I keep asking myself, is Star Wars even worth fighting for anymore? I'd like to say yes, to cling to the hope that maybe some spark of the original magic can be rekindled, but after the slew of mediocre, at best movies and awful shows we've been subjected to, that optimism is fading, and it's fading fast. The suits at Disney seem to have this unshakable belief that they know better than the fans who've kept the fandom alive for decades. And I hate to say it, but maybe they're right. Maybe this beloved space opera is broken beyond repair. Maybe it's time to admit defeat and just move on. And to be honest, it's far more enjoyable making content about Star Wars than actually watching Star Wars. After all, nostalgia can only carry us so far. But we know they will blame you for not watching their shows too.
It's still, basically don't kill people and be compassionate and love people. And so that's basically all Star Wars is.